let's talk about the game that seemed to be dominating 2025, Schedule 1. Indie games have been a very popular genre recently that I feel gets more popular as AAA companies go and release the same mediocre, boring gaming slop over and over and over again. It's actually nuts, bro. While there of course have been exceptional indie games that have stood to be better than most AAA games that come out and have even sold better, and also in some cases people love indie games so much nowadays, it's led to some of the most hyped people have been for a game announcement. I mean, look at Silksong for example.
Oh, and that's all for today.
No,
I did not need to scream for
more.
Okay, they're doing like
Silksong is just gonna drop in.
In 2023, you had games like Lethal Company. In 2024, there was Balatro that was even nominated for Game of the Year. And in 2025, we have games like Repo, which is a very fun game in my personal opinion. You have games like Expedition 33, which let's just say has been received extremely positively. In fact, actually, hold on. Okay, I'm actually really surprised it's only very positive. I feel like it should be overwhelmingly positive. This game has gotten so much gas, and I would love to play it sometime. Please, everyone, can you spare some change? I'm poor and ugly. But the main topic for this video, and the game that I really want to get into, for reasons you'll see in a minute, is Schedule 1, which is one of the newest indie games that's taking the world by storm. So this is the Steam page for Schedule 1 right here. It says, from small-time dope pusher to kingpin, manufacture and distribute a range of drugs throughout the grungy city of Highland Point. Expand your empire with properties, businesses, employees, and more. Now, if you couldn't tell by the explanation of what this game's about, you're selling drugs to people. Basically, it's like GTA if everyone looked like Rick and Morty characters. Now, as you can see from the Steam page, it has the rare, overwhelmingly positive rating, and to say people are enjoying it is a massive understatement. You have drugs, skateboarding, money laundering, face tattoos, punching randoms, and the ability to get away with murder. Yep, worth every penny. 10 out of 10. Watch someone run over a cop as I'm just standing on the corner and then was wanted dead or alive. Finally learned how to skateboard. 10 out of 10 recommend. Okay, I'm not gonna lie, this nigga wrote like an entire essay. I'm just reading the first paragraph, bro. I don't even have to sink the 500 minimum hours I usually attempt to do before reviewing to say this one's it. Can you believe it? A game that doesn't insult your time or intelligence as you play it. A fulfilling and sometimes hilarious play loop depending on how serious or goofball you want to play it, which only gets better if you play it with friends. A game which honestly shows the love, care, and effort being put into developing a game. And amazingly, all being done by one guy. This game alone gives me hope for the gaming industry's future. People often wonder, sometimes I ask, what does the game industry need? It's games like this. No, not a drug tycoon crafts sim, but a game that shows what happens when you have a dev that's actually in tune with its audience, like drawing a much larger one in the process. This game could be lightning in a bottle, but as it stands right now, this game has thunderstruck many in its wonderment. Bro's writing video essays, bro. Jeez Louise. Put that guy on my line. So as you can tell, a lot of people are liking it and playing the hell out of the game, but there are a couple parties that don't seem to be as fond, let's just say. Some of these reasons, I have to say, are some of the dumbest I've ever seen, and trying to make a problem out of something that no one's complaining about. And I won't lie, it's just really dumb.
You know that game Schedule 1? You may have heard of it. Very successful indie game that launched a few weeks ago. Well, it's coming under fire from the activists, the modern audience activist sort of people. So that's always hilarious. We're going to take a look at a gaming journalist article on The Gamer, why they're mad at this game, and also a post over on Reddit 6 hours ago. This article from 6 hours ago on The Gamer. It's incredibly racist. Schedule 1 comes under fire for one of its achievements.
I'm not gonna lie, this just like, it's brain rot. It's actual brain rot. These people are so fucking weird and bored. They just try to make a problem out of every single thing and want to think everything's racist. It's actually insane. Just, oh my god, get a sense of humor and shut up, please. But with every nothing burger drama where people on Twitter pretend to be activists for 5 minutes, there's also companies that don't like this game. To the point where one in particular launched an entire investigation, and it's one of the dumbest investigations I've ever heard of. But let's not get too ahead of ourselves, and let's start from here. So here we have Schedule 1 under investigation for alleged copyright infringement. right. So to give kind of some more context into specifically what exactly they mean by copyright infringement, who's doing it in the first place, and kind of what's going on in general, let's start here. So this investigation into Schedule 1 started on March 24th, 2025, which, if you guys were paying attention, is the same exact day to when the game was released. Okay, so as you can see here, it says Movie Games SA, decision to initiate an investigation against production creators under the title Schedule 1 of claims regarding violation of the user's IP and related to committing an act of unfair competition against it. The management board of Movie Games SA, with its registered office in Warsaw, publishes information that today, on April 3rd, 2025, it received a legal analysis carried out by a legal consultant, an intellectual property expert in acts of unfair competition, which indicates that premises have been identified indicating a potential infringement of the issuer's intellectual property rights and actions that may be unfair. On March 24th, 2025, on the day of Schedule 1 premiere, the issuer's internal resources began with a comparative analysis of the company's IP. Among others, Drug Dealer Simulator and Drug Dealer Simulator 2 and the Schedule 1 project, which immediately identified the use of many copyrighted elements that include elements of the game plot, mechanics, as well as UI, aka user interface. So just so we're all on the same page, this investigation is coming from Movie Games SA. Man, Movie Games sexual assault? What the hell is going on over there? They need to be the ones to get investigated, am I right, boys? And similar to what the investigation report said, they are the publishers of the Drug Dealer Simulator series. It's similar to Schedule 1 with basically the same premise of you being a drug dealer who goes and tries to become a kingpin or whatever the hell you want to do. Sell drugs to people, basically. Get them hooked on the Zaza. Get them hooked on the Za. But wait, there is more. A lot more. Movie Games SA has its own series of drug dealing games, Drug Dealer Simulator 1 and Drug Dealer Simulator 2. While the name is more overt in its goal, both titles have attracted thousands of players respectively. The legal document mentions potential infringement of the user's intellectual property rights and activities that may bear the characteristics of unfair competition have been identified. Ergo, Schedule 1 is too similar to the Drug Dealer Simulator series. And then they make a pretty apt comparison, I would say, to Power World, which, if you guys don't know, that's an entire other can of worms. That game actually had a whole lawsuit against it from Nintendo, and once again, it's a whole can of worms that I don't want to get into right now, but just know it's Nintendo's on some bullshit, bro. Let's be completely clear. Now, what they mean by this is that this investigation was conducted because Movie Games claimed they found something in Schedule 1 that they deemed as infringing on their IP. Which, like, what do you mean? If you look at both games side by side, they're completely different in art style. And from what I understand, the developer behind Schedule 1, whose name is Tyler, creates his models completely from scratch on his own. So I wouldn't believe they shared any assets or anything. So it is really weird that they're investigating them on the basis of the very loose theming of both games being about selling drugs to people. Because, pardon my French, this on top of all the other reasons they listed is pretty retarded if true, man. Like, just to be clear, like, I don't know what to tell you. What, are you guys gonna go after GTA 6 next or something? Because both games have girls walking in the game? Like, what are we even talking about? But as I read from the lawsuit, once again, I'm taking this very slowly. The investigation is strongly looking into elements of the game plot, mechanics, as well as UI, aka user interface. And it finishes by saying the user will immediately inform about other further actions related to the pursuit of claims regarding the infringement of the user's IP and the act of unfair competition in subsequent current reports. It's not a meme. These guys have actually put this game into an investigation because both games are about selling drugs. I don't even know what to say about that. So let's take this one step at a time to show you guys that this is a very frivolous investigation and this is just really stupid. So for start, the element of the game's plot. Now, I haven't played Schedule 1 myself, but the story of Schedule 1, from what I understand and what I did with my 15 minutes of research that I always do, is that you're a small-time drug dealer from the South that goes to a fresh new town to sell drugs to people. And the plot to Drug Dealer Simulator 2 is this. So here we have, set in the early 2000s, you will control a criminal by the name of Eddie, who had an entire life full of bad choices stacked up against him that has forced him into hiding. He eventually finds the fugitive paradise of Isla Sombra, perfect for people like him to survive, and maybe even thrive. Not content in living a new life, but vowing to take his old one back, you must help Eddie ascend through the ranks of the common street thugs and become a full-fledged drug lord with all the allies, resources, resources and money he can amass. These are the two most standard generic drug plots of all time. Unless this investigation is owned by like Al Capone or something, what are they infringing on exactly? Now, next they mention the mechanics. The only thing that both games have in common mechanic-wise is a phone mechanic to introduce you to the tutorial. But what, are we copywriting the process of using a phone in a video game now? And as for UI and user interface, from what I understand, it's literally just boxes at the bottom. Like these are just nothing. These are such nothing burger elements, and I don't understand why they're doing this. Well, I do understand. It's obviously jealousy, but like regardless, it's weird. I don't think you guys need me to say it, but this did not go over well with the general public. They were not behind this whatsoever. And there was a lot of comments basically trashing on Drug Dealer Simulator, saying that it was half the game that Schedule 1 was, saying that this is pretty much out of jealousy, saying that it's a PR stunt, and that people were basically saying this is bullying. They're bullying someone who's one dev working on the game. Now, we'll go over some more clarifications in a bit, but one I have to make clear right now is that the developers were not the ones behind this. So here's the Drug Dealer Simulator 2 on Steam. This is their Steam page. As you can see, the publisher is a Movie Games SA. These are the people that issued the investigation into Schedule 1. The developers are Byte Runners, and that's who's developing the game. They have nothing to do with this lawsuit. It is strictly only Movie Games SA, from what I understand. But despite that, people were not happy and made a statement by review bombing Drug Dealer Simulator 2 to get in an overwhelmingly negative review on Steam. That's definitely an accomplishment. Ultimately, this is where it pretty much ended, where people were angry and confused as to what was going on and why they decided to target Schedule 1 specifically, because there are other drug dealing simulator games that are on Steam, but they decided to target Schedule 1 specifically. What's up with that? And at this point, we were just left wondering what the hell was going on. A lot of people, myself included, thought of why they were doing this was simply because they were jealous of how good the game was doing. From this comment that says, the small indie publisher, their words, wants to fuck over an even smaller one-man studio because they see him as a potentially easy target and because they are so jelly that their own game doesn't even have a fraction of the competitor's success. Hope they lose a fight. Now, I would agree with this. The only issue is that, once again, this investigation was on the exact same day that the game came out. At that point in time, I don't think there was really a huge measure as to the success of the game, and I definitely don't think Schedule 1 blew up as much as it did on the same day that it came out, if that makes any sense. So that's the only issue that I would personally have with this theory. But other than that, that's the only thing I can personally think of. Unless Movie Games has like some sort of vendetta against the developer, I have no idea. It's crazy because like imagine if Zeekers, who by the way is the person behind Lethal Company, launched an investigation into like Repo or Content Warning, which are two games that take very similar mechanics to Lethal Company, because both games have very similar mechanics. It's just so lame to do that with games, no matter if you're someone as big as Nintendo or a smaller publisher like Movie Games. It's ridiculous regardless, and I hate that this kind of thing happens in the first place, especially when it comes to indie titles and people infighting in the community. I actually thought this comment here was a pretty good opinion on the issue. So this person says, my biggest question is, how come Drug Simulator 2 is just now going after Schedule 1? The games do not compare in terms of playability and ease of use. Not to mention Drug Dealer Sim 1 and 2, neither were finished. 2 barely had multiple players. They're just mad someone did it better. There is more context to all this stuff that's going on, and I'm going to get to that in a second. I just have to say that I think it's important to have kind of this notion where game developers, whether you're a developer or a publisher or whoever, let people use the mechanics that you created even if you made it popular in the first place. And having a monopoly on things like that, especially as something as broad as drug dealing, it just stunts so much potential growth and creativity because devs have to watch behind their backs just in case some insecure ass publisher comes in on some boogeyman to scare away people's ideas. It's lame. Either way, there were some misconceptions that people came to when talking about this, and this leads into the statements that were made a few days after this initially gained traction. And now, fellow gamers, we need to flash forward to April 8th, 2025, where a statement by Movie Games themselves was actually posted on Steam. So here you can see the title is regarding Schedule 1, no lawsuit. Dear gamers, we'd like to address your Schedule 1/drug dealer simulator publication and share some facts regarding the situation. Now, from what I've read of this statement, the biggest thing that they wanted to clarify was that this was not a lawsuit like a lot of people thought, but was just an investigation.
Also, I want to make a mention of this. I talked about it on stream briefly, but I changed the title of yesterday's video covering this. I initially called it a lawsuit that they launched against Schedule 1 because that's how a lot of other media reported it, as a lawsuit that had been launched. But it's not 100% accurate to say that. It's an investigation that's been launched, which does start the process of a lawsuit if Movie Games decided to pursue it. But right now what it is an investigation after they've said they've identified infringing material in like the narrative, mechanics, UI.
The reason a lot of people thought that this was a full-blown lawsuit was because when companies like Dexerto reported this whole thing going on, that's what they falsely labeled this thing as. So here you can see kind of the original tweet from Dexerto, and it says, "Dealing game Schedule 1 has been hit with a copyright infringement lawsuit from a rival title. The popular indie game is only in early access, but is already facing litigation." They even had to have this tweet community noted because, like, it's not, once again, it's not a lawsuit. Also, I have no idea how they messed this up, considering they called it an investigation in their own article that they link in the post, but okay. Now, to be clear, this could lead into a lawsuit if they find something, which I highly doubt. So either way, while I think it does matter in terms of reporting the story, I do still think that whether it's an investigation or a lawsuit doesn't matter to my overall opinion. It doesn't really change anything or any mindset that I have. Like, this is still like a ridiculous thing to do. Now, the next thing that they attempted to clarify was why they were doing this in the first place. So you can see the analysis and investigation were necessary in the light of repeating opinions that the games are very similar. By not investigating it, Movie Games, being a publicly traded company, could face severe consequences for negligence. This was probably the most confusing thing that I would need more clarification on, because this sounds like a complete lie to me. And before anyone says it, "Hey man, so you're just gonna rip from Charlie's video? How dare you? You're gay and cringe." Guys, chill man, I get it. He's a go to this shit. I'm gonna put what he says, okay?
But you're saying that repeating opinions are what drove you to this about how similar they are. How does that work when you filed this investigation the same day Schedule 1 launched? They filed this on March 24th, the launch day of Schedule 1. How many repeating opinions could there have possibly been? Like, it's not like this is something that had been simmering and bubbling over like speculation. Did Schedule 1 infringe upon Drug Dealer Simulator's copyright? Like, that wasn't a prevailing thought process. This happened immediately when Schedule 1 launched.
This is very true and a really good point. I mean, maybe you could say that they somehow had some insider knowledge on the game's existence before it went live on Steam, and that's how they figured this out on some like Mission Impossible James Bond action. But to me, I think it's more logical and easier to believe that Movie Games saw this project as it was and were scared of the project's success in some way, and then did the investigation to see if there was any way they could put the project down a peg. Now, they do mention in their statement that it's not their intention to shut down Tyler as a developer, and goes into a little more detail in their statement to Dexerto about the whole thing when they reached out initially. So this is the full statement here, but the thing that really we're going to pay attention to, because everything else we've already talked about, they say there is no ill will towards Tyler Video Game Studio. We even mailed them best wishes shortly before the release when the game was already huge, but before the investigation was deemed necessary. But then once again, why do the investigation? You know, the first step that goes into a lawsuit. And wait, hold on. I might just be a dumbass. That sentence doesn't make any sense. They said, we even mailed them best wishes shortly before the release when the game was already huge, but before the investigation was deemed necessary. This investigation happened on the exact same date as the game released. This doesn't make any sense at all. What? The only other thing that would make sense to me is Tyler himself having a reputation before this game was announced. But if you look at all the games that he's made, Schedule 1 is literally their first project. So I feel like something is not being said, is being kind of weirdly worded. I don't know what's happening though. Now, another thing that I found weird was their fifth point, where it almost feels like they're vaguely saying that if they weren't required to be fully transparent by the ESPI, they wouldn't have even even posted the investigation. This just, to me personally, speaks as a publisher that got angry that they got caught by so many different people and the story blew up how it did. And it's just kind of weird, and it's honestly like kind of nasty. It makes me stick my tongue out in disgust. So overall, I would personally say that this statement is pretty ass, all things considered, and really makes movie games out to be very shady in my opinion. So now we enter in Byte Runners themselves, who once again are the developers of the Drug Dealer Simulator series, and they provided their own statement on the same day. So they said, in the light of the recent movie games versus Schedule 1 legal investigation controversy, I would like to state that we, Byte Runners, the development studio behind Drug Dealer Simulator, do not have any ill intentions towards neither Schedule 1, Tyler Video Game Studio, or the game community. And they basically reinforce that Movie Games SA is just doing their job and that they have no influence over what happens here. And honestly, this makes sense because there were a lot of people that assumed that the developers were behind this. To my knowledge, this doesn't seem to be the case, according to both them and Movie Games, who cleared this up in their own statement. Now, a few days later, on the 15th of April 2025, Byte Runners released a second statement where they pretty much maintained their opinion on this whole thing and basically went into a more detail after talking to the parties involved, including Movie Games, and basically came to the conclusion that they personally don't want to pursue any legal action and feel like Movie Games is doing too much, just to kind of summarize the whole statement because it's really long. And I'll make sure to put it in just so you guys get a chance to read the entire thing. Now, looking at the comments, I think people are kind of being a little unreasonable to them, if I'm going to be honest with you. Like, for example, this guy, he says, terrible response. You guys just need to be silent at this point since it's very clear the devs are also on board with this move. It's very clear that it took you guys days of backlash to make a statement. Then the statement isn't fully condemning the publishing company. Now, I'm not gonna act like I know what's going on behind the scenes. Maybe they are lying in their statement and they actually wanted Tyler to get fisted by the Movie Games SA. But I feel like it's understandable that they wouldn't completely talk their publisher, because I mean, they're their publisher. As much as Movie Games are garbage in this situation, Byte Runners obviously don't want to affect relations with their publisher that makes it possible to release their games. Byte Runners is definitely stuck between a rock and a hard place right now, and I do feel bad for them because ultimately they're pretty much non-avoidable collateral in this whole thing. Considering we do not own the Drug Dealer Simulator IP, we do not have direct influence over the decisions surrounding the investigation or our publisher's policy. However, we have expressed our concerns and opinions to them directly. And that's pretty much where things have been at this point. Now, Tyler, for the most part, hasn't really said anything at all. He's been mostly working on the game and has been just doing live streams where he does basically some 3D modeling and basically game dev. I don't think he's really too worried about this, and honestly, I wouldn't be either, but it does still suck because it's like being roped into the situation is very, very annoying. Now, overall, what is my conclusion to this whole drama? It's really, really dumb. I think I've said everything I need to say. Movie Games is moving like crazy ops right now. They are doing a lot for very, very little things. I don't think there is anything they have on Schedule 1. I don't think they have any merit to investigate into them, and I really, really hope this isn't pushed into some stupid lawsuit where Tyler has to like take down his game because he doesn't want to understandably spend money to defend himself on something that he didn't even invite upon himself. From what I understand, he's made everything by himself. So it just sucks to see that they're willing to take advantage of this. And once again, it's just bullying and it's just so AIDS, bro. So yeah, I really do hope the situation gets resolved between the parties involved and that like nothing escalates. If it does escalate, you guys know I'll be on it. But either way, that's pretty much all my opinion. And like I said before, I will never support video game companies, whether it's someone like Nintendo or even like a smaller indie company, sitting down and trying to bully somebody else because they stole a mechanic, which isn't stealing. I don't believe in stealing mechanics in games unless it's like a really, really specific one that's like game defining to your game. Obviously, you have a right to protect your IP. I don't doubt that whatsoever, but this is definitely not a case of that. Maybe one day we'll get more answers as to why Movie Games decide to do this. I don't know. We'll see what happens. Let me know how you guys think, and I will see you guys in the next video. Don't do drugs, but do drugs in Schedule 1. Get out of my house. Bye.